Hello and welcome to another installment of My View from the Piano Bench. Facing this way, of course, and aha, there are some notes. We do this every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. here on my Joel Holt's Notes YouTube channel. In addition to Piano for My Friends, which is more of a cocktail hour style-ish thing, every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all of you who support and encourage me via the links you'll find on the support page of my website. And this is why I can continue to do this and I can keep it going. So I really appreciate it. If you go there, take a look. Different tip jar options, including a unique take on the tip jar or a low maintenance one perhaps on the Patreon angle, if you're willing to look at that. So here we go. Another sort of excursion into my own experiences or my own view or my own whatever. Speaking of view, some time ago, I just gave up caring that the top of my piano was a mess. There are things that are just who we are, right? So it's like, fine. It's not always a mess. In fact, I'm having the piano tune soon, so nothing can be there. But, the whole sort of cluttered space, cluttered up here, that's just all true. So let's go on. The topic for today, the stage as connection. And this one is really important in my view and very, very central to what's gone on in my path in the last decade or even more. But certainly currently this kind of rises to the top. And if you've hung around me for a while, you'll know that I talk about the stage or the performance space, not necessarily a physical stage, but the performance space as to where it all happens for us. And the thing that I'll say right off the bat is that the stage is our school. And you think about it, it's like that's where we get the experience of performing and doing this. But that experience of performing is so multifaceted. And it's not simply about playing whatever music you've learned how to play. Of course, that's your first step, that's your ticket there. But then it's expressing yourself there, it's living there, living life right here. Living my life at the piano bench is kind of where it really happens and where it really all centers. So the stage is our school where we learn things. You also hear me talk about the connection that music makes with other people. And that connection and from the stage is kind of relevant to what we're talking about, and that's where it pretty much happens, or from the performance space, right? That connection is something that has fueled my energies, has guided my path, has directed me in certain ways. Since I really understood that music making is about ultimately connection. And I had no idea when I first discovered that, how that would set me on a path and what that path would bring. And I can see everything from that point as coming directly from it. And you've heard me tell the story, so I'm not going to belabor it. But, belabor, I'm not even going to try to tell the story, which is going to be difficult, but I'm going to try. So the idea of the connection, I'm just going to describe it in a sentence or two, wish me luck, was first impressed on me during a sing-along at the Showboat Casino in Atlantic City. That's a story I've told so often that if you've been around me for 5 minutes, you probably heard it. But it was such an epiphany moment. Doing what I was doing because I liked to do it and it fulfilled me. And then the eyes get open. It's like it's not just for my fulfillment, and it's not just for my enrichment, and it isn't all about me. So back in that day when that's, grand piano that fell from the 10th story of the apartment building that you're walking under in the city on the sidewalk underneath, when that fell on my head, I may have been playing this tune, or I was certainly playing a tune like this. So here's my little environment where that connection first grabbed me in with the concept of it and never let me go. Who's sorry now? Well, where do I start? All right. I kind of want to comment on what just happened, but I think it's better if I just keep going. It is what it is. Uh, so, the stage being where we learn, a stage being from which we connect to other people, and also the stage being the place where we connect to other people on the same stage. And it uh, kind of occurred to me that I haven't talked about that part as much. But as I mentioned or alluded to, that part has become an increasing part of my world. Uh, and probably, or maybe certainly, wasn't enough of a part of my world early on. So I'm just like kind of catching up to all the benefits and joys of those experiences of connecting people with people on stage, connecting with the musicians who are with me on stage. And first thing you have to say about that is it doesn't always happen. In fact, it's depending on where you are and what you're doing. You know, for some musicians, it seldom happens, and when it happens, it's like, you know, wonderful moment where like the angels have descended and are singing around you, and you hear this beautiful, you know, celestial music, right? Esoterically, but it is the experience we all strive for, and it's also an experience that we, at least I've come to understand, that we prepare for. And we put ourselves in the position to have that experience of like the profound connection on stage. And when we have those deep experiences, that kind of uh, is its own reward. It motivates and it validates us as musicians and as performers and as participants with each other. Uh, this week is a ideal time to do this, and what motivated me to do this now, because this is the Wednesday that follows my most recent First Friday at the Mainstay concert. The series is First Friday with Joe Holt, and it's an extension of the Mainstay Monday series that I had. I could talk about that, but I'm going to try to stay focused. Wish me luck. What am I talking about? And uh, the basic idea, though, of having a unique experience on stage based on unique circumstances, unique selection of guests, and the uniqueness of a particular moment, right? And boy, did that happen Friday last week. And you can watch this. I don't want to talk about this without making sure that you know that you can see this. Uh, I believe that I actually linked to it. I did, now that I think for a second, on my Facebook musician page where many of you follow me, and the page where I make the announcements every week about these videos. So you'll see the direct link to the video. If you're not on that page, and I'd like to say I'm going to remember to put the video link in the comments, but I realized that I said that recently and didn't do it, not even know what I was talking about. The Mainstay Live Streams YouTube channel. Easy to find. Go to YouTube, search in YouTube, Mainstay Live Streams. Go to that channel, and it would be the First Friday with Joe Holt video for May. And if you do it within a couple of days of this video being posted, it'll be the first up there. When you have the time, watch that, because what that really depicted, illustrated, showed, I'm looking for a deeper word, but what was evident there was this very connection going across and around the stage between three people. And, you know, I didn't think, in planning this show, I didn't I mean, I thought of that in broader conceptual terms, but I wasn't really thinking, boy, this is going to be the show that really shows stage connection. But that's what was coming back to me immediately in comments, and also, you know, what that experience was. And the unique part of that connection was that these are two artists, and I'm going to reference them both later in terms of my own experience with them, Beth McDonald and Sharon Sable. And I have significant musical interactions and a significant musical performance path with each of them, and they're different. Although they're very similar artists in some regard, they're very different in other regard. And I knew that bringing them together on the stage for the first time, which resulted in them meeting for the first time, not on stage, because we did have a rehearsal before, and we got together earlier that day. But I knew how deep that connection was going to go because I know both people very well. And of course, I already have a deep rapport with each of them. And so watch that if you get a chance. And you enjoy the show, but you also see like the growing connection between Sharon and Beth even as the show goes on, and then my connection with all that. So 2 illustrations that I can give you about, or will give you, or I'm going to say about the connection between musicians. And the one would be, and did I say here? Yeah, I said that connection doesn't always happen. And on stage, it's the difference for me, particularly if it's a show that I'm responsible for. It's like my show at the Mainstay that I put together. But this has also happened on shows that I'm not responsible for, but I realize I need to assume some responsibility during. And you could describe that as just like taking the musicians with you, or taking everything that's with you, throwing it on your back and carrying it around. It's like there comes this time when, okay, this really isn't happening. Come here, let's go, and you do it. That's not entirely who I am, and I like to think that's far from at least the total of who I am, but that needs to be in our skill set bag. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the experience where musicians are going to hold hands in a common space. It's illustrated visually, not literally, but visually by 2 or more musicians being on stage, reaching out toward each other, and then you have this common place where everybody's connected, right? And that is the center of gravity for the music. And that center of gravity did not exist precisely. That moment did not exist and could not exist until that hand holding happened. And then it's a unique place. It's a unique place that you might repeat the circumstances of it, but even if you do, you're not going to repeat that unique moment, that unique space. And that becomes a new space. That space now is the connection hub for the musicians on the stage, and then out to the audience. And you'll sense that in the First Friday video if you watch it. So it's new. What's new? Every new moment is new. And also there's this lovely tune called What's New. And that was a very terrible first chord. Let's slide it there. There you go. And something that's definitely not new, if you're asking what's new, is my my ability to have a brain fart. And lots of things are going through my mind, which is often okay. But at that point, I distracted myself. I'm like, what key am I in? What am I doing? And so I'm just admitting it. I'm acknowledging it. So let's go on. In one of the Mainstay Monday shows, the guest artist, who's a jazz saxophone player, and one that I had never interacted with before, and he kind of swims in different circles than I do. He's a different stylistic player, so we were in this sort of unique moment, and we get to the first half of the Mainstay Monday show, which is the first time we had actually really played together. And he's just looking at me, and he says, "Joe, you're really engaged with what I'm doing." You know, and he's as if like that's new to him, and this guy's a professional musician and educator and everything. And I'm staring at him. You're like, duh, you know? So I'm thinking, I hope I'm not looking like, duh. But, and then he said, oh, I know, that's what it's supposed to be, but it almost never is. Musicians don't do that. And I was kind of stunned. If I think about it, of course that's true, but I don't find myself in those situations, which is a whole nother, rabbit hole to go down, which the things I've chosen to do in my career and the circumstances that I put myself in aren't always the typical musician circumstances. So don't lend me to just like playing in all these environments. But I mean, I can certainly relate to what he's saying, going back to what I'm saying about putting somebody on my back. But that's more of a circumstance that that's kind of your job. But what you want to set up and walk in is where people are connecting. But that connection requires engagement. It requires listening. And I know I should have written down that Keith Jarrett quote, but I put it on my Facebook page just yesterday, I think, that your main job is listening. And if he's improvising or you're improvising and you're not listening, you're going to quickly have nothing to say. Because it's all about, again, that connection. He's expressing it a little bit differently. So I almost said his name, it doesn't matter, but the saxophone player really did illustrate the truth that connection doesn't always happen, but that's what we want. That's what we strive for. I don't know that everybody actually practices to that. And it's something that I've learned to do. And you could say that this is about having an experience beyond yourself, but I mean yourself, in quotes, right? Having an experience that brings something else into the equation. And of course, you're also putting yourself outside of yourself, in the, what do you call it, illustration, and the symbolic idea of picturing it being out here. It's not really about physical space, but you understand what I mean. And this also relates to a quote from a longtime musician friend of mine. It's been a long time since I've seen him, actually, but I played so many gigs with him. Bruce Kaminsky, I'll say his name. And he has all these little wonderful quips and sayings and stuff. But there's profundity here. Take this broadly. You can put a small g in front of the G word if you want, if you need to, but however you interpret the G word, he says that two people can make music together, or two or more people, is proof of the existence of God. And what he's talking about is what I'm talking about. It's where is it happening? It's not happening inside here. It's happening out there, and it's just, And it's this thing, again, which reaches out and touches everybody around. So let's just talk about the connection between two people. I'll play a song, and the song, well, T for two, seems to not be related directly to the idea of the connection musically between two people. But when you think about it, you know, there's this connection and there's this space, and this space creates a path, and we will build a family, and you know, can't you see how happy we would be? And all of a sudden, the connection becomes and fuels us forward, and is its own thing. But that moment is where it happens. And so I don't want to say it's a stretch. It's a little bit of a sideways move, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. And if not, maybe I don't understand it either, and I'm not trying. I'm trying to be in the space. Oh, my relationship to words is increasingly precarious. it is. Yeah. All right. A little tea for two or a lot of tea or something. I don't know. Or as Pete Puma said, no what, no tea, give me a headache. I can't believe I just did that. All right. I need to talk louder so you can hear me. So maybe you didn't hear me before and that would not be bad. So those connections are the moments that are the reward for us. That's why we do it. You know, connecting within ourselves to the space outside of ourselves, and then thereafter to other people. But then some of those connections will bloom not only into flowers, but into their own paths. The blessing of doing what I do, one of the blessings is the rapport that you develop with people, that you have the ability to, you know, live in a certain space, you know, and the rapport you have is centered around that, you know, but that sort of unique thing just doesn't happen every day. And I've got several of them. Three of them I'm going to bring up. The most recent one in the last few years would be with Sharon Sable. And the pandemic gave us the opportunity. She approached me about it before the pandemic. And I met her first in 2019. Actually, I met her very briefly before, but really interacted with her first in 2019 when I invited Sharon and Sean Kisani, her husband, to do a Mainstay Monday with me. And Tea for Two was the song she put in front of me, not played the way I played it, very differently. And I was sort of befuddled. I was like, why? Who does it like this? And it turns out that's how Blossom Dearie did it. And that was like the initial tune that got us all started with that. But that has given us the opportunity to become one really good friends. And the pandemic gave us the opportunity to really spend time and come out of the pandemic going. We keep saying the CD is going to be out like in 10 minutes, and it was supposed to be this spring. It might be early summer. Hopefully we'll still be in June, though. And you'll see if you watch the video, a few of those tunes made it to the Mainstay show was about what if Peggy Lee and Blossom Dearie shared the stage, because Beth has a big kind of Peggy Lee category in her heart, and Sharon has a big Blossom category in her heart, of course, among other categories. So at this point, when you go to my performance schedule on my webpage, you're going to see the name Sharon a lot. Not everything, of course, and you know, that wouldn't work. But the reason that's kind of vibrating really right now is because we're just in that energy phase of like the rocket ship kind of taking off, whether it's going to just like go up a few feet and wave a flag and then drop back down, or whether it's going to propel itself somewhere. But this project is so strong. It's gonna go some places. It certainly will. And you also see my name on Sharon's website for the same reason. But there are other paths, of course, that are ongoing. So I thought about playing a Blossom tune, but I realized that Tea for Two kind of fulfilled that. So I'll just play another tune that, you know, when I do gigs with Sharon that aren't always Blossom Dearie related, we tend to often do. Patsy Cline tune. So another musician who I've been on a path with for considerably longer is the other performer in that video, Beth McDonald. Walking After Midnight would be a tune that she and I have done too on a few occasions. But Beth's primary thing, which you'll know, again, I keep saying this if you watch the video, is being a very deep singer-songwriter, but also influenced by, as she'll say, but it's true, the era when jazz was popular music. And that would be the era that Peggy Lee came up in with her first hit with when she was with Benny Goodman in the early 40s, Why Don't You Do Right? And that's a whole nother topic. There's topics everywhere to be uncovered and talked about of the idea of jazz understood as an art form being the popular expression in the culture. And that went away after, not too many years after Why Don't You Do Right? And that's something that absolutely can be talked about. But for Beth, the singer-songwriter realm is where it runs the deepest in her. And at the same time that I was working with Sharon to get this Blossom Dearie CD out, I was also working with Beth, or you could say helping Beth out, but working with Beth in her latest release, which has been out a couple of months now, called Paint Me Blue. And it's the third of 7 recordings that she's on, but it's the third that's all original tunes. And as she'll say, this is the most her, or from her voice, she'll say, this is the most me that I've recorded so far. Very poignant. Obviously, I would recommend it, not just because I'm the piano player on that. But you can just imagine, just with the categories that I'm talking about, that the connection and the rapport musically and the hand-holding with somebody's original pieces is a little bit different than it's unique to the circumstance where you have like 2 more improvisatory people playing. And Sharon, although she's not like an improvising jazz musician in that sense, she's more the jazz singer than Beth is ultimately. But both of them cover a lot of ground. And I am blessed to have both pass. And I've, like I said, known Beth for about 17 years. And she'll always be a most important friend. And the musical, she doesn't like the word journey, but the musical journey or path is what facilitates this, allows this to happen. And that's a blessing, conceptual blessing in our world. So I'm going to bring up one more ongoing path because I'm going from newest to oldest. And it's fitting to bring up here for those who watch this series, because you're going to be seeing the name Mediri more and more as we go forward. And you know the story, Joe and Paul Mediri, and if you don't, the short version, if I'm capable of such a thing. Joe and Paul Mediri and I went to high school at the same time. We were a grade apart, and them beginning to learn music, having never played before, and they were 16 years old. Pretty remarkable what they've done, given that circumstance, is what connected us and what we came together around, and the kind of stylistic and shared vision that we both had. And we just immersed ourselves in that rapport. And as you know the story, you know, they've gone to do their thing, I've gone to do my thing, and there have been periods along the way where that has intersected. And that the last major, before now, thing about us coming back together ended in 2008. And we've just been doing our own thing and, you know, kind of having a little bit of rapport under the radar. And now we're approaching 50 years. 50 years since we began doing things together. And so we were talking about this 50-year or 50th anniversary tour commemoration of some kind. And I think I initially proposed it, but we're all totally on board with it. And so we picked up a show that we didn't know we were going to have. The circumstances of it are in June, whatever Sunday it is in June. You can look at my website. The British stride and boogie woogie pianist Neville Dickey was going to come over. And prior to the pandemic, he came over every year. And he's like older school than I am. And every year, the Tri-State Jazz Society would have him for a concert. And Neville always wanted to have the Mediri brothers play with him. So they were scheduled for June, right? And Neville had to cancel. He's overseas, he's in England, and he's not coming. And so the opportunity presented itself to plug in another piano player. So, yeah, I'm filling particular shoes, but this is going to be its own thing. And this is the trio that Joe and Paul and I formed when we were teenagers. So imagine the rapport, right? And the connection. And with Joe, that connection, and Paul will talk about this a lot, was always just pure radar between Joe and I. So we could not see each other for a long time and come back and just pick it up and go. But I recognized something else along the way. When we came back together again in the early 2000s for a while, that was around the 30th anniversary of us meeting and forming our first little group. And we decided to make a little something of it and did a trio recording to commemorate like the 30-year anniversary. And some of you probably have that recording. It's called The Other Brother. So after we did the recording, I proposed that to Joe, like as a title. And he said, well, that's okay if you want to do that, but if you do, you have to adopt me. I'm like, oh, boy, did that give me pause, right? And I realized then, and I hadn't thought of that before, the idea of home, the idea of something being so familiar, not familiar, familial, that it elevates itself to this kind of elite special category, right? And these guys are like my brothers, and I get it now because I'm an only child. I never experienced that, but it absolutely is going home. But what defines home with these guys, or any musician? That's the connection on stage, the moment, the hand holding, all of that. So I keep my schedule right now on my website on the shows page a couple of months out, and I'm going to try to get further with that. But you're going to be seeing more and more Mediri things, and you're going to be seeing more and more Sharon Sable things too. And the Beth McDonald world, you'll start seeing that. Some of that happens under the radar, and Beth isn't out there as a performer as much, and that's not her primary profession or livelihood, although she wouldn't mind if it was, especially if it involved just being in a recording studio. But all three of those are blessings, and the blessings all come from the connection that music gives. And those connections just facilitate whatever happens thereafter. So what a special place I get to be in. And is it worth all of the nonsense, I could say that with all caps and in bold print, nonsense, that being a musician exposes you to, or thrusts you in? Actually, yes. And so I'm really glad I can share it with you. So I'm just going to play one of the tunes now that I played with the Mediris. In fact, this particular tune, written by U.B. Blake, and I think 1930-ish, right? And I was thinking, okay, so I'm a teenager in the 1970s, okay? And I'm playing tunes like the tune I'm going to play, Memories of You, right? And, of course, back in the 70s, lots of people were still around who had experienced the culture firsthand in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And those are the people I was playing to. You know, that was sort of became my tribe. You know, and of course, those particular people are pretty much all gone. And there's not a whole lot of people with firsthand living experience in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. In fact, you saw my Facebook page where at the recent Madiri concert, there was a gentleman who was 99 years old and a World War II vet. I wish I had gotten this thing, but I posted his picture, you know, and of course, World War II was in the 40s, right? So I was hit over the head, and some of you have heard me say this. I keep saying that phrase. I have to drop that phrase. When I was like looking at Billy Joel tunes and realizing the distance between here in this time, in this year, and when Billy Joel was doing things in like the 70s, is the same difference between me playing Memories of You in the 70s to the era of the 30s where it came from when I was playing the Senior Citizens. And it's like, wow, Billy Joel's the new U.B. Blake in the timeline. And it's just, man, did it hit me over the head. But shut up, Joe, and play the piano. Do I talk to myself often? Of course I do. Well, thanks for joining me for what it's worth. We'll do this again. Keep in touch with my website, and I mentioned having the performance schedule out a couple of months in advance. That's actually an improvement from what the average was before, and I'm going to try to get it out even further. Hope to see you soon. Thanks.